Good evening, everyone. This is the East Aurora Union Free School District Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. May I have a motion to enter executive session to discuss the employment history of 9 particular individuals and matter related to particular students?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Zillweiler, second by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Thank you.
What?
We're returning from executive session where we discuss the employment history of 9 particular individuals and matters related to particular students. We have any agenda changes? No part 1 and 14. No items on board action. We'll move on to board presidents and board member comments. The policy committee is continuing to meet to work on the policy review and revision as promised, and we have the second reading of 2 sets coming up in your agenda. Policy committee meeting has a couple of meetings coming up with more to come in February.
This Saturday, Joe and I will both be attending the advocacy training and the legislative breakfast with hopefully our legislators. So we will be able to report on that at our next meeting.
Thank you very much for attending. Mr. Cassidy?
Nope, just that. And coming up next week is the delegate assembly.
Thank you for sharing what that means. Flower?
There's a couple of things.
Great.
No rushing along here.
No, we've got 9 minutes.
9 minutes?
All right, there we
Yeah.
go. Sit back, everyone.
The Budget and Finance Committee met on January 9th. Mr. Brunson and Mr. Daniel attended the meeting along with Superintendent and the Business Administrator. When our discussion centered around on the 23-24 budget, we looked at changes in TRS and ERS salary obligations in 21-22 and compared them to 22-23 and down the road compared to 22-24, just to see the change in increases certainly in those areas. And we also did that the same year for employee benefits. And we talked about a plan to end the school district's reliance on COVID relief funds. In short, we discussed how much our expense is going to increase, an estimate, and will we have enough revenues available to cover those increases? Will we have the revenues available to fund new initiatives? If there are new initiatives, there are options for paying to cover those expenses. If there's a revenue shortfall of estimated expenditures, we'll need ideas on plans on how to close the gap. We certainly the COVID relief funds are looking at. So we kind of kept it simple, but in terms of large scale expense items and what they look like, last year, this year, and then moving forward next year, and then 2024. So, kind of plan to address those. Also, the facilities committee met on December 16th and December 12th. Mr. Brunson and I took part in those meetings. The agendas presented at the 2 meetings are really quite similar. Mainly the architects are working on updating the long-range plan for the capital project. They will review the pre-referendum list, review priorities, and start dates for the project. The immediate priority is replacing the doors at the high school and Parkdale, which we're well aware of. Regarding the STD submissions for the doors projects, the submission is scheduled for January 27th, just for those items. And they'll plan for construction in the summer of 2023 this summer. And of course, that's pending STD approval. That's about a 4-month process. Also discussed under the general scope discussions, the district expressed a desire for all buildings to have a consistent system to include part design in the area of certainly the PA system. We asked about camera scope and it will involve full change overall system, but what's in the budget currently is just ending in that. place we have now. And then also notes about some internal discussions about some wiring. There's overhead wiring. Should we remove that or should we not? And then we talked about potential schedule, phase 1, 30% at the end of February, 60% at the end of March, 90% of the schedule done by mid-May with SCD, send it in June. Targeted bid for phase 1 would be December 2023 this year. The construction sometime in 2024. Then phase 2, submission to SCD on May of 2014 with a target date of November 2024. I'm sorry. And with construction in 2025. I think most of the board members have the minutes that are submitted by our architect, but some of those I just want to read out loud so that people in the audience can see those and maybe ask questions. Mr. Brunson, I know you at the budget meeting and the construction meeting.
I think you covered it very well. Thanks.
Mr. Daniel, I know we were at the budget meeting.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on the? Right. Ms. Skinny, ready to do? Okay, that was it. Mr. Brunson, are you all covered? Uh-oh. All right, administrators, we're jumping all over. Any administrators that will wish to address the board this evening?
I'd be happy to start. We're excited at Hartfield to start our very first podcast club. We have 14 members of our fourth grade crew, and they're going to be working with Mr. Duck, and they're starting a new podcast club. So that starts this today. Everything goes well. And we also are really excited about our upcoming STEAM event, which will take place on March 16th. We have lots of great projects ready for the community, so we hope you all come out and visit.
Thank you, Ms. Sankola. Mr. Brown?
I do. Checking the date.
What day was the STEAM project? March 16th?
Yes, March 16th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, so less exciting, but equally as important. I just wanted to let the board know, or really to thank our support staff, counselors, speech pathologists, psychologists, our AIS teachers, and our grade level leaders. We had our comprehensive review day this past week, and what that is it's a time where we actually speak about over 200 students, and we go over various input from teachers, different test scores, different progress monitoring, and we really take an in-depth look at the supports that we have in place for these students and any additional supports they may need, or are there things that we can peel back a little bit. And it's just really impressive to see a group of educators that know their students so well and to talk about literally well over 200 students in the school. So I just want to thank them for their efforts because it's a lot of work, but it makes me very proud that we can honestly say that there aren't any students falling through the cracks, and especially as we, are still dealing with the aftermath of the impacts of COVID and everything. We're feeling very confident that we know where our students are at, and we have plans in place to support them. So that's the one thing I just wanted to let you know. And the other is next Thursday night is our 7th and 8th grade drama club performance here in the multi-purpose room. So I can email you to let you know, but we would love to have any of the board members or anyone in the community to come check that out. There's a lot of different scripts and mini plays. It's not like a big overall generic play with physical, but we have several students in our 7th and 8th grade drama club, and we're looking very forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to piggyback off of that, and I hate to do this to our past crew, but the show is less than a month away. And our next board meeting, I think, is just days prior to, so wanted to advertise for that front row seat, jump on the website. Invited to it now. I went for a little preview after school today, hoping that they would offer me a part. Still thinking about where I might fit in, maybe. Okay. But the show looks great. Super excited, and a wonderfully talented group that will be less than a month.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. Anyone else?
Well, mine's far less exciting than any of that. I should have gone first. Usually by now I do a presentation on the assessment scores from last spring, 3 through 8 in regions, and we do like our own scores when we look at area 1, area 2 regionally. I just want to update you. The program or the company that we use, Forecast 5, to pull all the data from, hasn't uploaded all the state data yet. So last year they did it in November. We've been bugging them since October about when it's going to happen, and we're still waiting on it. So as soon as I have that data available, I'll do that presentation for the board in a meeting, hopefully February or March, but as soon as it's available, I'll get it up.
Thank you. Anyone else tonight? Thank you for being here.
I think we're missing 2. Okay, all right, we're gonna go on to your business.
No community comments?
Sorry.
No community cards. Okay, then, we're on to item 9, community comments. We don't have anyone who has signed up to speak this evening. But I do have a note that we received an email from this morning about mask mandates. We received one from Mr. Lally about CPR and basic first aid, and one from Dr. Grove about football and injuries. So you all receive and read those.
Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you very much. All right, we are moving on then to item 10. Business office operation.
Ms. Lyons has been out. I had a request from a board member regarding participation in the breakfast and lunch program. So I provided this data for the board to review. And it has to do with going from universal feeding to now we're not on universal feeding, and how the free and reduced numbers and how the participation on full paid numbers have changed based on that change. So this report, it shows pre-pandemic numbers from 1819, 1920, the pandemic hit in March, 2021, 21, 22, while we were in the pandemic in the universal feeding, and now back to 22, 23. And the final 2 columns are comparing the data we have so far this year against last year. And then the data we have so far this year against pre-pandemic, back to 1819. So I just wanted to share that with you.
You'll see those numbers go down. We have from the beginning of this year have gone further than we ever have in terms of promoting the free and reduced lunch program. You see the number of paid participation is way up. So either that's a sign of the economics or it's a sign of the quality of the lunch program or something else. We have reached out to all the local community centers, library, houses of worship. We've created posters, we've hung in all those places, letting people know about the free and reduced lunch program. Our social workers are reaching the families that might be eligible. So the lack of participation or the decrease in number is not due from lack of effort. We in fact have never pushed this hard because we knew coming off of universal feeding back to the more traditional model, folks might have forgotten what they were doing 2 years ago in terms of signing up. They haven't heard about it. It's not like a trying on to start. So it's just interesting data to watch.
Now, on the back of the report, where there isn't any comparison because we're not that far yet, but in the 1920 school year, you'll see some very strange numbers. And that's when we were doing door-to-door meal deliveries. And that's directly related to the pandemic when the scope broadened. Instead of just school-age children, it was all children in the household from birth to 18 years old. So those numbers look.
And Mr. Manfredi, as we've discussed in the past, with the free and the reduced lunch program, there's no way that students can be identified as receiving a free or reduced lunch.
Yeah, so 2 things just to refresh you. In New York State, so the free is obviously free at the federal level, the cost quarter. In New York State, the state covers the cost of that quarter. So it's called the federal food reduced, which is free. All students are given a 4-digit PIN, no matter how that gets funded by the state, by their parents, by whatever. You type in your 4-digit PIN, you get the same meal everyone else gets. If there's insufficient funds, you still get the meal. There's no lunch shaming. You just peanut butter and jelly. Unless you love peanut butter and jelly, It's totally just, you push the 4 digits, light goes on, and everything happens in the computer in the business office.
Thank you.
If I'm reading this right, as the months go by, it's looking at December and then comparing it to 1819, ahead of the ballpark. I'm ahead of myself. That was my first glance at this. So I mean, working up to get, the information out, I think is paying off. It's just, I think it's a slow bill.
Right. Right, and, you have to remember that nobody needed to apply for 2 years
Yeah,
because it was
exactly.
universal feeding and trying to remember and to get all the, applications in.
Information, other questions or comments?
Well, my only comment is that, I would hope that we're being sensitive to, individual students' needs. These numbers are very helpful for us to understand the ballpark situation. And I think from a ballpark, look at this. Obviously, fewer people are eating school lunches this year than did last year. So the break it down any way you want, but the lunch and the breakfast program, fewer students are participating than they did when it was free. So my concern is that we ask our counselors and our social workers and all the folks that look out for the well-being, the overall well-being of our students, not just with the opening metric, but their overall well-being. Monitor this and see if some of these kids are deciding not to eat for one reason or another, because their parents didn't fill out the form, or because they don't have the money, or they didn't qualify, or whatever. And I know across the nation there's a big increase in the amount of debt that students are accumulating with the lunch program as well. So I just would like to suggest that we have an all-out effort to make sure that the child who wants breakfast or lunch can get breakfast.
And do so in a respectful. I would say we are very aware of that, and that's part of that student review day that Matt talked about. We're looking at children holistically. We're very present in the lunchrooms. There's kids that looks like they're not eating a single day. Somebody, you okay? Do you need something? Do you want me to get you something? I mean, certainly it's for everyone. I would say it needs to be paid attention to, but I would not.
And the CSAW has done a great job informing parents multiple times. Again, as Ms. Burke said, getting out of the habit of signing up is definitely that. What we can see since the beginning of the year to now, that number has grown. Right, so more people are participating. So it's just taken one time to get them back on track. And so they've done a really great job of really staying on it. And as Mr. Brown was saying, those kinds of reviews, they take into consideration the entire child and what they are struggling and what they need to do. And then it's being teaching the classroom about people who are there in place and stuff, the administrators, the teachers corresponding on cafeterias, the aides that also assist if they see a child is maybe eating, they address it. So a layered approach, sure.
And if a child does not have money for lunch, or gets his lunch or whatnot, we do accommodate them. Yes. Now on to my regular business report. Our financials this month are as of the end of November. Everything's in balance. At the end of November, we have approximately $9.4 million in the general fund, which ties to our cash flow. Again, I believe our cash flow will good. We shouldn't have any issues going through the summer months. We had expended approximately 25% of our appropriated budget, and we have received approximately 71% of our revenue budget. In the cafeteria fund, what we were just talking about, again, I always caution, I always think there's a timing issue between our revenues and our expenditures. But revenues again exceeded expenditures by approximately $40,000. But that's not shot in time. Our federal funds are running as I would expect. And the only other thing I have to report was in the capital fund, since we had our capital vote, and it was approved, to use the capital reserve money. That money will be being transferred into the capital fund, so by the end of the year, you'll see that reduction in the capital reserve. And we're using that money as the seed money for expenditures that we had to date, architect fees, Dancy's fees, ECCs, different fees that are coming in right now. They're small things, but that provides the cash flow to cover those ones.
Any questions for Ms. George?
Where you
Okay, knowing that I'm the only one, the only thing standing between all of these kids and cupcakes, I'll go fast. You'll see on the top again, which is expenditure, things are trending positively. All early conservative estimates. The only one that's going to catch your eye and is a little bit of concerning, but it makes sense. It is what it is, and we've absorbed it. Is the tuition, which is primarily for special ed placements. We'll significantly more than anticipated. You'll see that's where that is. Everything else balances out. We did get our BOCES invoice, which was the reason 5-6 years ago we started the grid when there was that big surprise. So again, in terms of expenditures, we're about 190 to the good, another 2,000 in debt services with universal feeding, so about 192 to the good. In terms of revenue, we are continuing to trend in a positive direction. The property tax item, that's final, the penalties and interest, so that jumped from 2,000 to about 23,000. State aid, conservative estimate, we're coming in stronger than we budgeted. Erie County sales tax, again, early, coming in better than we budgeted, to the tune of about $100,000. Remember last year, that's where we got a number of about 500,000. We're not anticipating that again, so don't get excited. But again, for expenditures, we are under expending, and for revenues, we're over receiving. When all of that gets washed out, we're about 527 to the good. But you need to remember that of that, it says 416, which was this year. Next year will be 418 will be the recommendation. The first 418 of that is spoken for next year's budget. So at this point of the year, we're about 100,000 to the good. For most folks in this room, having an extra $100,000 sounds like a really good thing. But when you're running a $34 million annual budget, it is a razor thin margin, but we're on the right side of the razor, and we're not anticipating any of those mid-year concerns which caused the start of this. You'll see that the federal COVID funding that's continuing to flow in anticipation. We don't see any concerns there. And the staffing numbers roll out similar to how they rolled out the last 2 years. So as of now, if the year ended, we are budgetarily sound, slightly to the good, but we're definitely not back. And that's the good.
Thank you very much. Okay. Superintendent's comment.
Yep, so now on to more exciting matters. Today we have with us the girls varsity cross country team who once again won the New York State Championship. So we are here to celebrate with them and this amazing achievement. Win a state championship in any sport is incredibly demanding. And so their devotion and dedication is really second to none. And we're so proud and impressed with their performance. And so we're here to celebrate them today. And before I turn it over to the coaches, I thought Mr. Navarro might like to share a few comments as well.
Right? We got it. Right here.
How's that sound? Good. We're ball party. And obviously, to win one state title is very impressive. Back-to-back state championships, and over the last 15 years, significantly even more than that. And it comes from we also were honored today, and they were honored today by the Section 6 Athletic Council. And I told them too, cross country, I think is thought of. Everyone thinks of cross country. They see the race. Everyone's out there individually. Walt and Marty have done a great job making that a team aspect. We're not up here talking about back-to-back state titles without them realizing it's the team. And some of the conversations I'll have in the hallway with the girls, very rarely do they know what place they were in. but they know what place their teammates were. And if you go to other programs, that's not what happens. The caring they have for their teammates and those girls, and the amount of time they spend with Walt and Marty doing things, and then away from Walt and Marty doing things, speaks volumes for what they've demonstrated and what they've instilled to achieve what they have. So I think we're honoring them. That's just kind of a tremendous achievement for back-to-back state titles and what they've won. So I'm going to step aside and let them kind of bring up the girls here as well.
Thank you. It's a real honor. Thank you for honoring the girls today. It was a great season. Any season has its ups and downs, and we had injuries and sickness as things went on. And at the end of the day, they ran their best races that mattered the most. So we really came together as a team, and we're really proud of their efforts. It's really kind of a year-round effort to be at the level that they did. We'll start with Amelia. I'll go in the order you have. You ready to come up first? We'll go ahead. Evelyn? Galen? Samantha? Catherine? Kate? Hope? Catherine? Lily?
So, thank you. Switched it over.
Mr. Hume, go. Go ahead.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
You guys-
That's what they want. That's why they're here.
Let's make fun of that. So,
And then you tell it,
We'll give it a week and then.
Thank you. Right, can we get another thing? We're moving on to item 10B, development of the 2020.
No. That's it. That's like, yeah, no.
Thank you, I had already confirmed.
Yes.
Development of the 2023-2024 budget. Yep. Please. For those following along in your agenda, we're starting next year. Does everyone have one there?
Okay, so, yes, so it's, budget season is upon us, and so this is our first, kind of go at it. It's gonna be very preliminary because we're still waiting for a lot of information from the state, but there is some good news that the governor has changed the process, so we're getting some data earlier. We got a release of what it could potentially look like in November. So it just gives us an idea, but that is not confirmed until they actually work through the process at the legislative level. So we'll read that in it. Is it, did I turn it on? I'll have to turn it on. Am I using these arrows?
Thanks,
No, oh, no. There's go. Okay, so here's the agenda. We'll look at this, balance for the district really quickly. We'll look at a FEMA update because we've got some good news there as well. We'll talk a little bit about the Budget Finance Committee and kind of their role in the budget development as we work through the process. We'll take a look at reserve funding, the budget development considerations, the state aid run that we received in November. We'll look at cash levy limit calculation, kind of past, current, and what we're looking like in the future. Per pupil expenditure, budget development calendar, and then we'll have a discussion. So again, and we've been through this before, the values are kind of our driving force as we develop the budget, both at the board level and administrative and teaching level. So, we really use them as a guiding force, and it's really been helpful, and I think it keeps us on track, keeps us focused. And so here's our FEMA update. You can see, Mrs. George, all the amounts column. Those are all the submissions that we've made to date. And we've received 111,742 of the 437,629. So you can see there's still about a little over $300,000 due to us. We're hopeful. We've had to go through a number of, let's say, back and forths with FEMA. They promised us a lot at the beginning of the pandemic. Go ahead, just deliver meals and do all those things that we needed to do, but they're not as willing to give us the money. So Ms. George has contacted our local and federal representatives, Senator Schumer's office, and they've been very helpful in terms of keeping the process moving, reaching out on our behalf, and that's what helped us to get that $111,000. So we're hopeful that sometime this year or maybe next we'll get the rest of the 300-some-thousand. So the Budget Finance Committee, we had our very first meeting on January 9th, and here's the topics that we've covered. Mr. Flowers kind of went over that earlier in the meeting. And we're going to meet, we meet every Monday before the board meeting, so Monday the week before the board meeting. So we have time to plan, and we use that information as we develop the budget process. And so our next meeting is on January 30th. We meet again on the 13th, the 6th, and the 20th, and we'll continue to meet as we need to as the budget process moves on. So reserves, and this is a really important piece because we're required to discuss reserves as we approach the end of the year. Reserves discussion is important for our accountants and our auditors because they want to make sure that we're being very purposeful in how we decide and where our reserve money goes. So at the end, you can see the projected for 6/30 of 23. We're looking at ERS, TRS, technology, capital reserve, and repair reserve as considerations. So we just want to put that out there as areas that we think maybe we want to focus on for this year. especially the capital reserve, because as Ms. George stated earlier, we're going to be pulling about $1.6 million out of the 1.784 to cover this facilities project that we're working on. So here it is. Here's the historical long-range planning piece. And so we've kind of gone by building, and you can see 22, 23 where we're at, and it shows some of the adjustments that we've made over a period of time. We have made some adjustments to this because we've moved some of the district personnel back into the buildings. And so there have been some changes in this, and also some additions, as you can see, from 2016 where we were in math AIS to where we are today at Parkville. We had one teacher in AIS for math and keyboarding, now we have 3. And that's based on the student needs, and that has developed over a period of time. So if you look through it here, you can see speech. The reason those have been removed because there's 3 speech teachers currently at Parkdale, and there's still somebody at the district level. But we've kind of broken those district level positions out to where they actually are taking place on the basis. So you can see like special ed is another place where we've seen some considerable growth. A little bit at phys ed, those types of things. From a total, we have about 62.2 positions at Parkdale.
Brian, could you just, the music, did I miss why are we down for music?
Yeah, so what happens with music, it depends on the number of sections. So that kind of ebbs and flows between the buildings. So like music teachers kind of move back and forth depending on the needs. Like, so for instance, there may be fewer kids needing lesson instruction at Parkdale this year, but there was more to middle school. So those people kind of move back and forth because of that. Yeah, so that's right. And that's like, you know, like for phys ed, any of the special areas that they're kind of fluid. So here we are for the middle school. Again, you can see some of the adjustments, like we added the section in 5th grade, again, to address student needs. We pulled away from the 6th assignments. We added an additional teacher because they restructured the math program, and we felt was a better way to deliver the instruction. So those types of things have happened over a period of time. Same thing with school psychologists and social workers. We moved them out from the central office position to having one of each in the building at this time. You can see like at top, the math increase from 3.0 to 3.6. Again, that's to cover the additional math instruction that they will see. And here we are again. So we have the total staff at Parkdale of 53.9. So here it is with high school again. We can see the growth. Growth has been a little slower at high school because we have seen like a shift in the enrollment. So losing some larger classes and bringing in some smaller, so it's kind of stabilized a little bit. But there's still some increases like in the area of math, for instance. But we see also some decreases in the area of health. So it's a little bit of give and take. We had total positions at high school 55.4 FTEs. And again, we moved social worker and psychologists out of the central office into the building level. Looking at administration, so there's 3 administrators at the central office level and 10 administrators at the building and director level. But you can see in 22-23, we have 13 administrators. We look all the way back to 16-17, we had 12. And so in between that time, we've had a reduction. And so we're kind of righting the ship. And I think what's important about that is that the responsibilities of the administrators have grown considerably over that period. So it's really had some lean years like 1920 when we had 10 administrators. So we're in a much better place right now. And so we can see here key for our psychologists, special ed, speech, social workers at the district level. These are people that work between buildings. You can see that it's gone from 4 to 2 because 2 of those social psychologists moved into the building reports. So now what we'll do for the next report, before I get into this, is we'll have, we're going to bring in the list of asks that we had over the last several years and what we're looking for this next school year as well. So here we are at the state aid runs. So some really good news. Foundation aid has been running for us finally. And so we are going to get our final installment, like almost $1.2 million, which is a really great shot in the arm. But you can see there are some reductions in different areas and BOCES, private excess cost aid, also in building. And those are relations to Like for instance, our utilization of BOCES, if our utilization goes down, then our aid also decreases accordingly. And so then there's just some minor adjustments that are made in the other areas as well. So here we are with our tax levy limit calculation. So you can see where we were last year. And Ms. George has been talking about the importance of getting us getting these two numbers to come together. And you can see over a period of time, there was a big gap here, still a considerable gap, but you can see here, they're coming much closer together, and that really helps us in terms of stabilizing the levy. And so we've been working that over a period of time, and so we're looking at the levy for 23-24. Well, one thing about the levy limit, you can see was $25,353,085, but we actually went out lower than that at $25,309,382. So we didn't go to the tax debt levy limit last year. We'll have to have that discussion as we get through the process in terms of what we need for now and long term, right? We're always planning not only for this year, but we're planning for the next 3 to 5 years as well in terms of anticipating what our costs will look like. So as we look at the levy calculation, do you want to comment on that?
Yep, the only thing different this year for the 23-24, this is our actual calculation. We have all the numbers we need already. And on the major number is the 1.02, the allowable growth factor. The state has already come out and said it's a 2% increase this year based on CPI, where usually we don't always have that number yet.
So that's really important. So it's the governor has changed the process, I guess, for the better for us. Certainly. So it looks like if we went out at the limit, the percent increase would be 2.96. So we kind of know that already. So that's something that we can keep in mind, and how we adjust that. That will be for our discussion. So we look at our per pupil expenditure. Okay, they changed this process as well, so it's taking Ms. George some time to get through it. But basically speaking, you can see that in Erie County, they're spending just over about $18,000. We're spending $16,554. And then if we look at all New York State schools across the state, the average expenditure per pupil is $23,468. So you can see we continue to, I guess, get a really big bang for our buck. We're lower than almost all. When we look at the expenditures for Erie County, we're always at near the bottom in terms of our expenditures. So we continue to be pretty frugal, and I think we're doing a good job of the dollars that we do spend. And here it is. So so February 8th will be our next budget workshop, and that way what we'll do at that time, we'll have like kind of our projections for what we need, so we can start really having those discussions. We're going to, again, we did a lot of hiring this year, and we filled a lot of really important spots. So we're going to try to pull that back a little bit, but there are a few things that we need to attend to, and we'll discuss that on the 8th. And then we have to submit the tax levy limit, but that can be adjusted. So we'll submit it probably where we are right now at the cap, and then we can adjust it from there as we move through the process. We have 3 more budget workshops in March, and then we have to adopt on the 19th. Which is also a board meeting, so we can have a discussion as well. So that's the time where all the rubber hits the road. And then we submit the tax report card, budget documents are made available. We hold the hearing on the 3rd of May, and then we vote with everybody else in the state on May 16th. So that's kind of it for now. So any thoughts, questions?
So questions, points of clarification, other items we might like to see for our upcoming discussion?
I thought it was very helpful seeing these numbers from 2016 on this board for each of the categories. Just seeing that laid out.
Great.
I have a question to help my knowledge of the budget. So we're lower per student than the county and the state, but is that's money that we're spending? Does that come into play when we talk about we get less state aid than, for example, the city of Buffalo would? Like, is that where that would be more important because we're paying more, like per student, we're not getting as much state aid? Am I reading that right?
That's starting to adjust a little bit because we are getting fully funded for foundation aid. So next year will be our full funding. So that really hit us hard during the gap elimination years because they look at our wealth ratio and our community has a pretty high wealth ratio compared to the rest of the state. So during the gap elimination years, we were hit harder with how much money they took back. But now we're getting more money than other districts who had less taken away during the gap elimination years with the foundation aid restoration, the funding of it.
Thank you.
But
That's
the per pupil expenditure, that's based on expenditures and the state has a calculation. I'd have to look it up. There's different ways to do it. I'd have to see how the state did it. But they do it the same for us as they do for Erie County, as they do for the state.
As a follow-up to that, it's good. The enrollment plays a big factor. And you mentioned during our last meeting that they're still using numbers from several years ago, and our enrollment was a little higher. So
Right.
when that's adjusted at some point, that'll be a major factor.
Right, and in my business official groups, we're having discussions on that. And once foundation aid is fully funded next year, what happens next? And we don't know what happens next. Are they gonna adjust those factors like enrollment? Are they gonna adjust the census that they're using for our wealth ratio? That was back in 2000. Are they gonna update it to the new census? Those types of things are really unknowns at this time. We have to wait and see.
That was a good question.
thank you.
You'll see that play forward too. They start bringing up the data.
It could.
So the adjustment in foundation aid, along with federal stimulus, has allowed us to add those positions like the social workers, the counselors, and the behavioral specialists that we needed. So if we didn't get those adjustments, we would have been very hard for us to get those outside of the increase in taxes beyond what we were. So for us, the timing was really great between. Now the federal funds are running out, so you have to have a plan to absorb that through money that is continuous, like it's never guaranteed. Foundation aid is a source that we rely on as we use that number moving forward because they're reluctant to adjust it lower. So we know that those funds should be fairly consistent coming to us on an annual basis as opposed to federal money that's only a one-time expense and once they're spent, they're gone. So there's that delicate balance that George is trying to use between shifting it from the federal grant into our general budget by utilizing the foundation aid as it's increased over the last few years. So,
And the one thing I forgot to mention that goes to Mr. Flowers' question also with the drop in enrollment. The one thing they are talking about after next year is still having a safe harmless clause in there.
Okay.
Since gap elimination, they have had a safe harmless clause, anywhere from 2 to 3%, meaning if your enrollment and all the factors that impact our state aid, if you come in below, they're gonna at least raise you from where you were 2% or 3%. That's the whole harmless clause. But there's talk about it. We still don't know where it's gonna land.
Thank you.
I would guess that if we looked at enrollment trends across the whole state, that we're not so much different from what's happening in the other 700 school districts. And so if there is an adjustment in the state level in formula, I doubt that it wouldn't affect us disproportionately. What has affected us disproportionately is when they have decided that we're too wealthy to get all of our money. So that they then say, well, we're just going to take back some. So that clawback is the killer, and hopefully they'll never do that.
That's the state harbor, that's huge. I know it from conversations at the NISBA voting, that there are some pockets where folks are seeing an influx of students, so the state's got a lot to balance. I think there are probably more of us in the decline, but when they figure it all out, they're gonna be taking the high needs and increasing enrollment folks into account as well.
Well, that's the other factor. if they're gonna change the formula, they can do it anyway. So they could design it in such a way, and that's what they did for years, design it in such a way that we got nothing.
Right.
And so, problem is we have little say over it. I mean, we can write our representatives. The formula is gonna be whatever it turns out to be.
And well, measures are gonna be a big part of that,
Well, yeah.
which hurts us.
And we just have to do what we've always done, which is to live within our means, which is why we have to be cautious about adding new positions, because we have to be sure that we can, continue the programs that we've started. We all know there's been some initiatives that were really important and deficits that were needed to be addressed. But those won't go away just because the state changed the formula. So we have to somehow or another make sure that we develop our budget in such a way that we have the flexibility to be able to keep those programs open.
Well, so I will start to see priorities and specific items, coming up. Is the one thing that weighs on my mind is our trip through Parkdale and the pre-K, the need for specifically bathrooms in the rooms and the need for that, as well as some issues with water. There are those things that we could address through budget or through capital outlay, or is there
Too expensive.
Yeah.
Too expensive. It would really need to be addressed to a capital project. So I believe that Mrs. Pinchona, Mrs. Marinaccio, and we've been discussing that issue and how to make adjustments to address that.
Yeah.
So we're looking into that.
It's come up at somebody's meeting, but is it something that we left there too? And in the capital outlay may increase, but even with that, right, it's still, bathrooms are really expensive. Very expensive. You'd be surprised how little you can get for $100,000. And so, if it goes to 250, that
Right.
still like your 2 or 3 or 4 bathrooms.
Right.
We heard anything more about potentially going, last year we expected to go from 100 to 250,000. I'm hoping that on Saturday morning, if our legislators come, I was going to ask that question.
We lobbied for that every year and it hasn't been
Yeah, and last year I met with the senator. He was really certain it was going to do it, and at the last minute, they changed their mind. It was everything. Like, we didn't hear back from him, but he had worked very hard to push that forward and be really good momentum. Because again, just because of the cost and the fees associated with doing any project, $100,000 is very diminished in terms of what we. And so, yeah, we're hopeful, and that will help. And I think it's probably a bigger long term, because there's also some discussion around pre-K that they're going to be expanding the program. There's so many additional slots that it was like
17,500 additional slots have been proposed. So,
Across the states.
Yes.
across the state. So if you divide that by approximately 700 districts, that's 25 slots per district. But I know it won't come out exactly like that, but there's the possibility of another section. So that's a consideration too, that we have to find either another space or one of our community partners would take the place.
250 is a great idea, but you have to budget for it.
Right.
It's not like
Right.
somebody flops 250,000 in front of you, just go ahead and build a
It's
bathroom.
not,
Right.
it's not free.
It's an additional from where we are now, 150,000 that we need to budget. So the beauty of that is that the maintenance back covers the majority of, you would say about 60.
The very next year, you spend it this year, next year we get that W.
With the local share, instead of being like 32,000, would be closer to 100,000 with
Right.
250.
Yes.
So I mean, there's real impact on the
Yeah.
I support. So, but there is real impact. quite as big as the signs. And it's more and more money that goes to lawyers, architects, and GCs, but it's really left with brick and mortar. You can't put a bathroom. All right.
Is another means of spending money to get things done.
I want to be Mr. Good. Right now, I want to be Mr. Positive.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins.
You got to do that?
Yeah, go for it. What you got?
There's a couple. So if I'm reading this correctly, you factor in the 980,000. I'm gonna go back to that number just a minute. Then you take a look at what the tax cap amount is, and then if sales tax comes in better. So we're looking at anywhere from maybe 1.7 to 1.8 in revenues or whatever additional to help offset, that's a big number. Am I going the right direction with that? Okay. And then a little more room too, is the building aid is down, but that would indicate that expenses are down. The principal and interest payments are a little bit less, so you're gonna get a little bit of break on the budget side of it. And this is really good information. This is really what I can grasp and get an idea what's going on. The private excess cost is down 15, but that number fluctuates. I mean, it's hard, but that could be higher. I don't know.
That could be higher. That number is a hard number, any of the excess cost aid, because the state uses very old data for their state aid funds. But as we discussed in the finance committee meeting last year, we have a company that we hired who pays for themselves in spades on management advisory, who helps us with the staffing.
Yeah.
So I always ask that company, what is your projection for our excess cost aid in the future year? And then I compare it to the state aid runs, and I try to find somewhere in between where it's a comfortable amount to change that
That's
number.
good information too. Thanks. All that helps me, and I'll help the rest of the board. This is good and very useful information. Thank you.
And Brian, this will be available obviously on the website so that all of our community members will have an opportunity to look through this and see all this information.
I've already checked, it's actually on there. It says,
Oh, it's good.
it says 24 budget development, and then
This is there.
last meeting's information was there.
Okay,
So
so
it will continue. Jeff, it should go up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Christie's pretty cool.
Terry and I did a nice Friday evening review and with very helpful response very quickly. So thank you. Very, yes.
I just had one question if we're done.
Sure.
In preparation for next month's meeting, I just wanted a consensus and some kind of direction for our asks and our historical asks. What have been filled, what haven't been filled? Just if you could, it doesn't have to be tonight, just sometime before the next meeting. We presented it in several different manners. If you can tell me which way you want it, then going forward, I can use that model.
I don't understand.
We have our historical long-range planning requests since I started. And it has gotten tricky to try to backtrack and did we fill this, didn't we fill this, what's still out there, what's not out there. We tried a couple different models to simplify it.
It confused people.
Right.
You couldn't, it wasn't really clear.
Right,
What-
so if you guys could let me know what you think would be the best way to present that, then I can assimilate it into that to
So
go
the question-
forward.
So last year, how we did it, and we had some issues with it last year, is like, for instance, the middle school budget priorities were replacing blinds, and then they had the 4 different years, and an X in the years that they were, that was completed. Or, yeah, no, that was completed.
Oh, that was completed.
It was
Yeah,
completed.
that was confusing.
Yeah, that was
Right.
right.
That's why I'm asking for consensus, so, and I don't have to have an answer tonight.
Okay.
So the question to the board might be, what information do we need to see? For a number of years, we wanted to see, we had those, it was after the devastation of the GEA years, we were trying to climb out of a hole. Now we're making new sorts of repairs after pandemic years. What information would the board like to see? And then we can work on making that make sense.
Yeah, and I feel like I remember the X's and I remember the confusion. I feel like there were suggestions and maybe even a second shot at that with some like words instead of X's. Or I'd have to go back.
I have to go back and look
But-
too, but,
But yeah, looking at it, because I remember the conversation about that. I thought we had corrected for it or
We did.
taken a step towards it. But I don't recall what it is, so I'll.
Yeah, Mr. Carson.
Well, I'm just wondering how much of this going back years.
Or when
maybe
we stop going back.
You know, I
They're all
mean,
based on
if there's something pending from last year that we didn't get to that's still important, I think that should be there.
Yeah.
And some new initiatives should be there. So, you know, I would just see two columns, pending from last year that's still a priority, new initiatives. I don't know what else we need. We didn't need to go back 6 years and find out that we added two.
Right, the
grades.
needs have changed in that time. I would think
Right.
what we might want to be more focused on as a board is what's flipping from federal funds to general budget. And how we're managing that piece.
yeah,
That's
just,
That's a good one.
once it's
Yeah,
agreed
that's the best.
upon, if you can just send me an email and then
Okay,
I'll know.
we'll talk about it and see, but does anyone have, we don't have anything really yet in terms of priorities, but can you project what questions you might have so we can get the answers lined up for you for the next meeting? What information are you likely to want? How we're going to fund things that we've been paying for through federal funds? What the priorities were last year that we might not have been able to address yet?
By building. It was helpful to have it by building, our down middle school, high school, whole districts.
Like we brought this down.
Yes.
See, what this shows you is like the growth over a period of time.
I mean, what we just
Yeah,
got.
like this.
Oh, yeah,
So
that-
this kind of takes into consideration a lot of those decisions that we made, and it does ebb and flow, because what happened was we prepare and we believe that this is what we need, but as the needs of the students change, then we adjust, right? We move back and forth, and so the outcome is this. Right? So this does show how we've made adjustments over time. And it doesn't say why or exactly how it happened. This is what's been the result of a number of years of planning. And so what we can do moving forward, because what happens is just so much information, it becomes overwhelming, right? It's hard to manage it all when you're seeing all these different adjustments. So if we simplify it in a way that Dan is saying, suggesting, maybe it'll be different. But the idea of here's what we are still working on, and this is what continues to be a priority from last year. And here's the new things that we're looking at as well. And breaking it down by building, I think makes a lot of sense too, because then you can focus, from elementary to middle.
And don't hesitate to take things off that might have been a priority last year that are no longer a priority.
Right.
Because very frankly, you can't afford to
No.
just keep adding.
Right.
You know, so if there's something that is successful and we don't need to address it, get it out of there. And let's focus on the things that we have to address.
I don't remember the method, but I know historically he's done a good job of showing us where we're making an addition, but it's being paid for because this is what we don't need or this is shifting over here. But we can see you can help us understand the movement so we can wrap our heads around how much is more and how much is just new. Right. That's very.
Yeah, it was a great point.
Any other questions or I think the historical information is great to see. That's really helpful.
Do you want email from all of us? Or you?
I would,
I would filter it through Jess.
okay.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Just that.
Because otherwise I'm back in the same spot. Yeah, like, sure, we're different ways.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation.
And I think that just for the community aspect of looking at the website and such, I know that I'm still getting questions concerning what's the difference between the capital funds and what's going on with this budget? Like, what's the difference? And I know that there's still confusion because it's just not something you have, like, that the community necessarily has to look at. So I don't know how to separate that so that people understand. Just something very
I'll try to
clear.
come up with a slide.
That's a-
how big.
Yeah, that
Is
it's
that something we
separate
can put
money.
on our website?
Right, that
So
it's
it's part of
separate
the-
money, that it's,
Right. It has to live in a logical place.
right.
That can be part of the presentation. I think we've had that in the past, where we tried to lay it out.
Yeah.
The issues.
That's gonna be in our article from the Challenger.
That's good. It was through one of those presentations that I understood like years ago, like
Right.
8, 10 years ago at one of the meetings that you explained the difference, and that's where I got it.
Yeah.
But that's the only reason, because I was at that meeting.
There are always people who will stop you in the street and say, well, how can you build that thing you're
Exactly.
building over there when you're cutting a man?
Exactly.
You know, fortunately, we're not cutting a teacher, but there have been years when we have. And so and yet at the same time, there were masons over there laying bricks. So it is something that community does not readily understand. That there are different pots of money and can only be spent on that particular purpose. So it's worth research.
Yeah.
The short answer is that the state provides funding for things in different buckets. And you can only spend it for that certain thing. So care of buildings is different than education of children.
Well, it's treated the requirements around buildings. It's not around technology or curriculum. You know, there's requirements in terms of our 5-year plan, right? We have to develop this plan. We have to be moving towards completing it and developing it at the same time. It's part of it. And so therefore they fund that. Reason they part of the 5-year plan so that they can plan themselves. So they look at all 700 school districts and they look at your plan and they're saying there's so many billions of dollars here in construction that's going to happen over the next 1 to 3 to 5 to 10 years. And so that's how they plan, and that's why it's required. So it's a completely separate piece from the general.
Right, and the other piece is that prior to the 5-year plan being required on certain districts, and I'm sad to say, most of them were urban districts, just didn't take care of their buildings. And these buildings are a huge asset that need to be taken care of, and that's how the state looks at it. So by implementing the 5-year plan, it forced districts to take care of their buildings.
Well, there were some catastrophic failures.
Correct.
Collapses
Because they were,
that seriously injured people.
Other questions or requests at this point? Thank you very much. Moving on to item C, Board of Education Administrative Retreat. So like two parts I wanted to talk about. One, sooner than later.
Yeah, so the first one is that some of the board members and I attended the ISPA conference, and we wanted to kind of share some of the details with the rest of the board. And so I was thinking that maybe I could have Sue send out some dates. We could set up a meeting over the next couple of weeks, and then we can have time to share and answer questions and share information. Things that board members found most interesting and I think appropriate.
Where's the conference? Buffalo. Is it in Buffalo?
I think so.
Maybe we can all go to that one. The years when we've all been able, or most of us have been able to go, have been very productive.
I think what we can do with this one is share, it'll be a bit of education, to share what we've learned and then decide what things we might want to dig deeper into or bring up at the board table for discussion.
Yeah,
Share
there's
the learning.
some programs that are related to board level activities, and then there's a number of things related to school activities.
Yes, the more the merrier. It's a really great opportunity.
And then the other retreat is what we've done for a number of years is the board administrative retreat. We had to put that on hold because of COVID, and so we really there's a number of topics that we could talk about. There was some talk on the table that we never got to, unfortunately, because the retreat was canceled. So I think maybe what we'll do is put that committee back together. So we'll reach out and just say, hey, what was left? Some of the stuff that's already come and gone, right? Because it's been a number of years, but there are still things on from that agenda that I think are relevant. So we can take a look at that, and then we can also talk about some of the pieces that we think are most important right now happening in school, you know, what are our greatest concerns, those kinds of things. So I'll work with Joanne and Mark and we'll coordinate that. I'll have Sue send out some invitations to people. Does anybody want to sit on it? Maybe, I don't know. I don't exactly remember.
It was myself and Jerome.
Oh,
Judy.
Judy and I were on it.
That was the Play-Doh.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Post Play-Doh, there was the one we never got.
And then there was one we never got to try. That was the last time we got together.
So the last one that we were supposed to do was originally November 5th of 2019. And then we pushed it forward to January. And I even have all of what you guys wanted to eat. This was January 31st. And then there was snowstorm, so, and then COVID hit. So we still, Mark, I'm assuming.
Did you say pepper?
I know.
So, I kept thinking we were gonna have it, so I saved everyone's.
What if we want to change our mind?
You did, you did.
Well, this is what you wanted, I'll change. Brian, you wanna be fun?
Did we get it?
So we do have that, which Mark, I'm assuming you still have.
Yeah, we'd have to, it was Jerome, Bill and I on the admin side, you, Judy, somebody, long story short, it was, the skeleton of it is still there. I mean, well, obviously we'll have to look at it again and freshen it. We haven't touched it in 2.5, 3 years, but I know we have the skeleton of that one. We can at least revisit that as a committee, see how relevant it still is, float those topics, just making sure that it meets all the needs. But, you know, we're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. So I don't anticipate it'd be a heavy lift to get going. Like most things, the date's always the hardest part.
Right, yeah, trust me, I know.
So who from the board would like to?
I would love to.
Well, if it's early in the morning, I can have.
That's my goal. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Anything else on retreat?
So when are we looking for that one? After budget season?
Certainly not March.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I'm quite honest with all the meetings and then breaking. Where's the Easter break? Is it earlier?
Early.
Very
Early.
Before the holidays.
Right.
I would say maybe end of May. How about that? After.
Well, yeah, maybe we can have it in a place that has an outdoor event.
So, I think it's a good. It just speaks back to work all together.
Yeah.
You have the time to relax. So.
Okay. Let's see if
And we'll get ours together the next whole summer.
January, February.
Yeah.
You need to know.
Yeah, it's a-
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
no,
the
it
morning.
is.
Oh, you're in the morning, that's what Jan said.
I'll do it in the morning, but if it's afternoon.
Okay.
Good morning, I do afternoon. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 11. Is there any legislation to come before the board? Thank you. Moving on to item 12, may I have motion to approve, or no, sorry, is there anyone who wishes to remove the consensus item? I have the motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Gagnon. Seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussions? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0.
You know, before you move on to the next item,
Yep.
there was a legislative action that the governor signed a bill last week, which will prevent a lottery winner from
Oh, yes.
causing the school district state aid to be reduced. So if one of these $1 billion winners should happen to be in East Aurora, that would, in effect, cause all of our state aid to reduce and all of everybody else's taxes to go up because of the change in the adjusted gross income of the district. So they solved that problem at all. So I'm really glad that they're looking hard at the big issues that are pressing.
That did impact a district though.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
in the North Country. So they-
So.
That happened.
I was up in Maine.
Last week.
All right, moving on to item 13, items requiring board action. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education perform a second reading to adopt the policies known collectively as the new section 9,000 as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Cassidy. Seconded by Mrs. Danu. Discussion?
Well, just thank you very much for revising the policy that I expressed concern about with regard to our relationship to the weekend. Just for those who don't recall what I said or what wasn't here, I was concerned that we should all be able to talk to the media, not requiring that we get permission from the board president. However, the board president speaks for the board, the rest of us speak for ourselves as individuals. And so as long as we keep that in mind, and that's exactly what the new policy says. So thank you very much for doing that. It's essential that we all be able to respond when someone from the media asks us a question. And to simply say, no comment, you got to talk to the board president, is not productive for our relationship with
And just to be clear, that was never the intent.
It was never-
We didn't read it the way that you read it, which is exactly why we do this process. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Thank you, Mr. Brunson.
But there have been sometimes, years ago, there have been efforts to try to muzzle board members a little bit. Not recently, and not with the current people. So we do have to be cautious to not let that happen.
Thank you. No, your comment and suggestion was well done, and as Mr. Rambrady was saying, it's so important for all of the board members to read this while there is an entire committee reviewing all of the policies. We look at it from as many angles as we can, and there's a chance we're going to miss one. So thank you for catching our miss and making sure we rounded out that vote. We already voted. We're good. Thank you. Distracted. Thank you.
No, we don't.
We didn't vote?
No.
I made a comment. Sorry, those consensus items. We had the motion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Carried 7-0. Thank you. Item B, superintendent recommends that the Board of Education perform a second reading to retire the policies in the current section 3,000 as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion? So moved by Mrs. Zillweiler, seconded by Mrs. Danu. Discussion. All those in favor? Mr. Lindbergh.
just a point of just clarification. So I've been working with policy services. Now that the 1,000s, 2,000s, and 9,000s are done, we're hoping this Friday, all three of those sections will go live in the totality on the website. So we've got, and the goal is Friday, into the weekend in case it doesn't, but the whole purpose of this is to roll it over or docs manual online. And those three sections are, let's say, within 5 days, will all go live, and then we'll just continue.
Fantastic. And where are we with board docs and training?
Policy wise, we're good, but that's the very narrow piece that I do. There's the business side and then there's the clerk side.
So we had also talked about the board getting some level of training.
Yes.
Okay, that's down the line.
Yeah, I'm worried just about the policy silo. They're working on it. I have the ability to make sure it's the way we discussed locally, and we're within days of those three sections. We in their totality up on the website.
Yeah, already fully trained and understands all the things.
Just kidding.
Yes.
That's your chair.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Excuse me. Item C, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the temporary appointment of Mark Manfredi as interim director of buildings and grounds, as detailed in your agenda. I have a motion. Moved by Mr. Cassidy. Seconded by Mrs. O'Reilly. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0.
One more job to add to your resume.
It's almost
January
over.
22nd. I'm good.
Item D, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the temporary appointment of Diane Seller, interim deputy director of buildings and grounds, as detailed in your agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Flowers, seconded by Mr. Brunson. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item E, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the provisional appointment of Brian Hornslow as Director of Buildings and Grounds as detailed in your agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Flowers. Second. Seconded by everyone, seconded by Mrs. O'Weiler. Discussion. Congratulations. Welcome. Welcome. Congratulations. Oh, thank you. Oh, look, all right. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Carried 7-0. Item F, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the provisional, interim and now,
Yes.
approve the provisional appointment of Diane Zeller as Deputy Director of Buildings and Grounds as detailed in your agenda. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Flowers, seconded by Mr. Brunson. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item G, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the extended appointment of Catherine McGarity as a 1.0 FTE long-term sub as detailed in your agenda. I have a motion. Moved by Mr. Cassidy, seconded by Ms. Daniel. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item H, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the extended appointment of Megan Helek to 1.0 FTE long-term sub as detailed in your agenda. I have a motion. Moved by Mrs. Weiland. Seconded by Mrs. Daniel. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item I, the superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the appointment of Morgan Mann to the position of 1.0 long-term sub as detailed in your agenda. I have a motion. Moved by Mrs. O'Weiler, seconded by Mrs. Daniel. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item J, the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the retirement separation payment to Dan Leach as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Cassidy, second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Flowers. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item K, the superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the retirement separation payment to Douglas Wicks as detailed in your agenda. May I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Cassidy.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Flowers. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Item L, superintendent recommends that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Elizabeth Casey as district clerk as detailed in the agenda. I have a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. O'Weiler, seconded by Mr. Brown. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried 7-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item M, may I have a motion to award the contract for hazardous materials testing for the 2022 capital improvements project door phase as detailed in your agenda. Moved by Ms. Stanier, seconded by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion.
Brian, I just, now that, what do? They do testing for that amount, that 4,000? They don't actually do any abatement or anything, do they?
Right, it's the testing. Stoll will be doing the testing for the door replacements. This is for that door.
Just for the
piece.
door?
Yeah, this is for the, well, there are doors at Parkdale and doors at,
It's a big
at the high school,
So they're just testing for that.
testing.
And if there's some sort of abatement needed, then there's a step after that. It's refreshing for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
So what is
So
the
they got
test?
3 quotes. They
Asbestos.
yeah, so if there's any asbestos, but we did get some good news. They think they actually can repair the door. So we can actually,
That's really
that's possible. Because the doors are repaired. But they came out, brought their engineers out, and they took a look at it, and so we're really thinking that we can fix it. And so we have to go through that process. So they got 3 quotes for the testing. And then if they find anything that we need to attend to, then it's a whole another problem. Or another issue.
That's what I had.
It's a deal. So we're hopeful.
Well, if anybody's wondering why building projects are as expensive as they are, because this is a minuscule part of this $23 million project. A couple of doors, you know, and it costs thousands of dollars just to find out whether they have asbestos.
Thank you for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carrying 7-0. Yes, thank you. Is there anything else that anyone would like to request to be put on the next agenda? Any board members have anything they would like to add as an agenda item? You may send them in after the fact. No, that's fine. All right, hearing none. Any other information come to us, board?
We have a report coming up in the next week. Meeting, or healing report or anything. Oh, good.
We need to make sure we allow enough time to, sometimes we'll kind of speak to those reports, but.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that, but-
Yeah, let's try to get it early.
Yeah, that's good.
I just feel like I haven't.
We can put it on in the and then let's see where it says. There's 2, but we have 2 sections. We can do reports and discussion. One, put it on there. And that way we can get it right on the board. Because sit there.
Before
That is a good idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they come up once every 5 years, so.
I know. It's, and math is an interesting one because there's so many changes in curriculum related to this.
They needed some programming, we changed the programming in the school this year, so we'll see what.
Well, you've adjusted staffing to address math. There's been a lot of.
Yeah, good points, folks, and thank you. Yes, we have had a couple of presentations that came up in longer meetings, and that was unfortunate timing for everybody. Items of information, next regularly scheduled board meetings are listed on your agenda and also in your budget presentation. Upcoming workshops are there, as already mentioned by board members. I have a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Perfect. Second by Mr. Cassidy. Discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Abstentions? 3-7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.